Welcome everyone to the Multithreaded Income podcast, episode 0. I am your host, Kevin Griffin. I'm joined by my cohorts, Chad Carter and Sean Barron. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well. Hope you are.
Ready to go.
Ready
Excited.
to go. Yeah. This is not going to be a traditional episode just because we wanted to spend a couple minutes to talk to you as the listener about how we envision multi-threaded income in our lives, in our careers, and how we can potentially try to help you in the future. So let me go ahead and start first with my story. I've been working professionally as a software developer, quote unquote, since 2006. I had a degree in computer science, got my first job working for a little company called Symantec. And you probably heard of them. They built the Norton antivirus, Norton security. It's the stuff you uninstall when you buy a new PC. I helped build some of that for a couple months. And
Here come the tomatoes.
yeah. So don't blame me. Actually, if you have bugs for it, I'll tell you about it later because they never fixed it. But what happened was I was working there for 3 months. It was a pretty good gig. And as a junior guy out of college, it was kind of life changing. Like, this is exactly what I wanted. Big company. I can envision myself working here for 20 some years. And 3 months in, we had an all hands meeting, and the vice president of the whatever division came down and said, "Hey, we're going to close the building. And by the way, most of you are fired." And just like overnight, I had a job and then didn't have a job. So I'm like, okay. Well, I went off and tried to find another job, which trying to find your next job after your first job is, if not harder, it's just as hard as finding that first job. Ended up finding a little consulting company. And I say a little, but we were working on government contracts. They brought me on. They started teaching me some stuff. I was in a really good place there as well. And I had that same mentality. Like, okay, I'm good here. I can see myself working here for a very long time, but I now have this new notion of there's no such thing as job security, right? So I start putting plans into action to limit my just exposure in the case I ever got laid off again, because that was the worst thing that could have happened to me at that point in my life, is not have any income coming in all of a sudden.
That's super interesting how you had to learn that very early on. Like, that totally changed the way you thought, like, early on in your career path. That's very cool.
I think we're all that last generation coming up where our parents worked the 20-year jobs, and you go work for a company, you put in your time, and the company takes care of you. And I have job security as long as you're doing good work. And there was nothing wrong with the work I was doing. I was doing good work. I was learning. I was becoming more of an asset to the company. And the company just decided the line items on the budget don't work. So these folks have to go. And hindsight's 2020 now, 15 something years later. But there's, oh my gosh, closer to 20 years. Oh, we're getting close there. But the hindsight is the company doesn't care about me. So why should I care why should I anticipate the company having me for a long duration? So I started putting things into place to make myself more marketable in the future. So I was going to different user groups. I was going to conferences. I was speaking. I was talking about everything I learned technically. I was making a lot of friends. That was the important part. I knew a lot of people, a lot of different aspects of the community.
We wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for that. That's how we met.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, you too. Is that how, like, conferences? Is that how you met Kevin too?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Wow,
Speaking of conferences,
it worked, Kevin.
It did. So throughout these experiences, I got a friend of mine in Pittsburgh sent me an email and said, "Hey, I have a gig. We need a contractor. Would you be open to coming to do this?" And the finances were all straight. My risk level was much higher than they probably would have been a year or two earlier. And I decided, let me take this job. And I stopped what I was doing to basically go independent and had a guaranteed gig going out on my own. And that guaranteed gig lasted a year and a half. And then the guaranteed gig just went away. So now I was in a place where I had to start pulling my own work. I was already I was conditioned for it. So I went off and I was finding new consulting work. And along the way, I also started doing a whole bunch of other stuff. I started building online courses and I was writing articles for money. And at one point in my career, I had probably income coming from 4 or 5 different avenues. And just some of it was consulting. That was the bread and butter. But then I had all these different threads going off and producing income for me. So fast forward many years into the future, I had a startup that I had started that failed miserably. That's a story for another time, but the consulting's been pretty solid. And up to this point now, we're starting Multithreaded Income as a coaching program, for lack of a better term, to help teach other people how to do what we do. My story in a nutshell, I don't like money coming from just one place. I need money coming in from multiple places. It's the don't put your eggs in one basket mentality.
Threads.
No. So spawn multiple threads. And if one crashes, it's all right. You got others that are doing the rest of the work. But you're all not here to listen to me go on and on. Let's shift over to Chad and hear a little bit about Chad's story.
That's right. They're here to listen to me go on and on. No, I do have a habit to do that. So y'all jump in here and cut me off if you need to. But yeah, my background, I actually understood the value of multi-threaded income back when I was in college. So I actually started working when I was 14 and places served hot dogs. Then later on, I started working at Hardee's at a fast food chain. Right? I did that up until I went to college and where I had a job on campus. And then one Christmas during the break, I actually worked at Hardee's in the evening. And I worked at a cement plant where my dad worked in the mornings. So I did 2 jobs. And it was just, I did two full, the Hardee's wasn't exactly full-time at that point, but a full-time job. And then the Hardee's one. So ended up that I would go and I did that for that Christmas break. Over the summer, I got smarter, and I said, being on my feet the entire day is hard because that cement plant was definitely a hard labor type of job. So I ended up getting a data entry job over the summer. So I would go to cement plant in the morning, and then on second shift, go work at a data entry job downtown. So I'd get up at 6, jump in the car, hit out the skirts of town, do the cement plant, come back to the house, shower, go downtown, do the data entry job, get off at midnight, go home, get sleep, up at 6. Did that for the entire summer. The interesting thing was when I was doing that, what I found was I was not as aggravated at things I used to be aggravated about, like, especially when I was doing the Hardee's thing. So I worked at Hardee's, like I said, from like the time I was about 15 because the hot dog place 14. But from 15 all the way up until college, I worked at Hardee's, and then again, I did some summer breaks. You know, by the time you do it, it's like, oh, certain things just get on your nerves. What I found was by having both of those jobs, it really didn't, stuff that would have bothered me otherwise really didn't anymore because I could just let it go if I needed to. So my Hardee's job was basically spending money. Same thing for the data entry job where I made more money at the cement plant. I would like to pay my tuition and stuff. And so that's what actually let me get through school. I paid for half my stuff. My parents fortunately paid for the other half. When I got out of college, actually, while I was still in there, I knew at some point I wanted to start my own business. That was kind of a thought I had in my head, and wanting to have multiple clients with multiple pieces of income. That was in my thinking for a while. At some point, I lost that. But at the time, I was thinking that's really what I wanted to do. I didn't, but the problem was I didn't quite know how to go about starting your own business or whatever. So when I jumped out of college, I got my first programming job straight out. And while I was there, I ended up talking to folks. I was really into 3D development, game development. I was trying to learn 3D game development really. And this is in the late 90s, right? So this is, Windows 95 was out, of course, Windows 98. Yeah, like the whole DirectX was just around. So again, totally aging myself here, but it is what it is. So that was the stuff I was into. Ended up a coworker of mine knew somebody who needed a train simulation done, and they wanted a 3D train simulation done. And so here I'm doing my full-time job at this company, end up doing this train simulator on the side. I told them I'd do it for $1,000. So $1,000, I'll do a 3D train simulation. So it's so funny. Anyway, ended up I charged about $10,000 for times all said and done, but it was at least a $50,000 project, if not more, because it's just I didn't understand scope creep at the time, right? And just coming out new stuff. And I'll do this, and this is what you want. Sure, I can do that. You live and you learn. That's how all this stuff works, and that's why it's so important to start early so you can learn the mistakes and get those out of the way versus just in there thinking about trying to do something. But anyway, so I did that. I created the simulator, and that kind of sparked. Like, yeah, I really want to do this. Ended up that company I did the simulator for wanted me to come work for them, and I was resistant at the time, but it worked out, and I did. I went worked for them, and I was with that company for about 14 years. So I started working with them in 2000, and worked with them until 2014. I didn't do anything else on the side until that point. In fact, I remember having a conversation with a guy at college about, well, if you want to make it, man, you need to put in 80 hours a week. Like you're gonna have to like really, in order to make it, whatever make it is, like you're gonna have to put in all this time. So that was obviously the story I was telling myself at the time. And sure enough, I had this one job doing the salary thing, not making any extra money by working more, but I was pouring all kinds of hours and time and energy into this company. It wasn't part owner or anything like that, right? But I did a good job for them. I helped them go from, I think, $8 million a year up to like 23 in the first couple of years I was there with the stuff I was explicitly doing. So helped the company grow quite a bit. But about 2007, I was kind of getting bored with the stuff and wanted, and again, still doing the gaming stuff on these sides, just as fun hobby things. Around that time, Microsoft created a framework called XNA framework. And it was the first time that developers could actually create games on a console. So this is the Xbox 360 era. That's when this was. So I ended up learning all about XNA, and then I'm creating a book on XNA. And so that was fine, made some income that way. But the interesting thing was that book came with a CD that had my software, all the code that was in the book on there. But the Pearson, the people that I wrote the book for, Sam's Publishing, part of Pearson, they sold the PDF as well. But they didn't sell the contents of the CD or didn't give people contents of the CD. So I spun up a site and using PayPal at the time where somebody come in, pay $5 and get my source, right? So that was like yet like another little side thing of income. Anyway, I wrote the XNA book. I did another one in 2009, another one in 2012. And that was pretty much like the only side income things that I had going on until I left in 2014. Ended up, there was an intellectual property issue they wanted me to sign. They were thinking about selling the company. And I wasn't, especially after writing the book stuff, I was like, I didn't want to, not that I had any big ideas, but I didn't want to hand over rights to them. And so we parted ways. Everything was on good terms, didn't burn any bridges or anything. But I really didn't have a plan. It was just like, okay, well, now I need to go find clients. I need to do something here. That was like in November of 2014. I spent December learning everything I could about some marketing. Code Mash was in January 2015. I think you and I were actually there at the same time, Kevin. Ended up while I was there at Code Mash, that company called me back, fortunately, and said, will you be willing to come back as a contractor? Sure. As long as I don't have to sign any IP agreements, I will. So I had all this plan to go and try to find clients and do these other things. Ended up, I had this golden egg landed in my lap after a month of pretty much doing the same stuff I was doing, getting paid a lot more and being able to work less, right? So I was putting my 30 hours in. And I know I'm going on here, so I'm going to try to wrap this up here, but I end up having, around that time, Microsoft announced this thing called the HoloLens. It's a device you wear on your head, augmented reality. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this on the side with this client. And I was wondering, should I go and create a bunch of, create stuff for other clients, or should I go to create a product? What should I do? Ended up, I created a membership site for developers to learn the HoloLens. Problem with that was Microsoft didn't turn that into a consumer product. Since they didn't turn that into a consumer product, I pretty much had 50 people paying me $30 a month, which was fine. But there's only like 1,000 people in the entire world that cared about HoloLens development. So there's only 1,000 developers in the world that even cared about this thing. and I'm trying to get $30 a month out of, and again, so it's like $1,500 a month. It's fine, but it's obviously not going to be the thing that's going to make me book some money and let me have the freedom.
Still banking on the metaverse there, Chad. It's coming, man.
That's right. Back on the metaverse. There you go. It's coming. All these things are coming. Everything's coming. So the ended up that what I should have done, just well, hindsight's always 2020, is I should have focused on the companies, because basically Microsoft, instead of on the consumer side, they were going to military and massive companies that had particular use cases for the HoloLens. What would have been the smart thing to do is to go and promote myself as a trainer to these companies, charge $30,000 a week, go on site, train 10 developers at a time, and that'd been just fine. And I'd be sitting pretty steady. But I didn't have that, I didn't have that hindsight. I was assuming it was going to the consumer route, and that's the path I went. Okay. Anyway, but since that so I've done that for 21 months, and then I finally shut it down because I just knew it wasn't sustainable with the amount of time I was putting in, because I was putting in between 30 and 40 hours a week. About 30, usually about 30. Sometimes it'd be more. Use about 30 hours a week on that. And so it just really wasn't sustainable to do that. And then about the same time, I was bringing on a client to do some e-commerce stuff as a new client. My initial company that I was with, that they're a client, that was wrapping up. And so ended up that with this one client that I had, this new client with this e-commerce stuff, ended up we got into a stalled pattern, waiting on some content, and I didn't have anything else in the pipeline. So here I knew the lessons of multi-threaded income, but we got down to this point, and all of a sudden I have one client, and we're kind of at a stalled point. I don't have anybody else coming in, and my money's running out, and my wife is getting really nervous. So I get another full-time job. I didn't actually want to get another full-time job, but I did, because I wanted to stay married. And of course, having a nice medical insurance and stuff is always a good thing too.
I have another story for that, right, Kevin? Like, what do you always say? Like, the worst case, you just go get a job.
Get another job.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
It's our motto. Is worst case, you just go get a job.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And it is very good, because again, the problem is, I remember we're starting out thinking, I want to know where it is I'm going. Like, I want to start here and get to there. And that's just not how life works, right? It's zigzaggy. You go here, and then all of a sudden you take a left, you go on this thing, and you take a right, you go on this. You'll get where you want to go, but it's not a straight shot. You can go all over the place beforehand, but if you don't start, you're never going to get there. You can't wait for all the lights to turn green to take that first step. You go and you run roadblocks, and you figure it out, and you go from there. So either way, at this point, I actually still have that a full-time job. Don't know how much longer I will keep that, actually. But at the moment, I still have that. But my wife is now a little aggravated because of the amount of time that I'm spending on stuff, because I have multiple clients that I am doing things for now while I have this. And so I'm about ready to make that transition out. And so this is one of the reasons why we're trying to interview folks and see who has been successful and who hasn't. And in fact, when I jumped out on my own in 2014, I hit Kevin up in early 2015. Like I said, we went to Code Bash, and we've been talking for the most part every week since 2015. I started Mastermind. That's where Sean was in there after a year. And so the point is, if you're thinking about figuring out how to bring on side income or make a shift or whatever, definitely take action. Obviously, try to have some sort of safety net. Don't just go off the rails or whatever, but definitely take action, because even inaccurate action or wrong action will help you see what the right action is. So anyway, yeah, doing all kinds of new stuff now, but I won't get into the nitty gritty of some of the recent things. But yeah, that's my journey up to this point.
Well, and get the help too, right? That's like while we're here, right? Because we've had a lot of experience going and trying 100 different things in a few different routes and such. Right? And I really wish, honestly, like I had a coach when I was younger Sean, hustling like crazy, like nonstop. So, like you mentioned, the amount of hours you were doing early on, right, between the two jobs, and then still took that into the salary job, and then that's a grind, man, for a long period of time. You know?
And for no real benefit. I just saved that company a lot of money, right? Instead of getting them to hire the developers they really should have hired at the time, as I'm going to be the Superman on this. Didn't have that coach, didn't lean on somebody, didn't ask questions, and didn't understand really what I was walking into. So go ahead, Sean. You just run down on your story.
Sure. So, all right. So me, man, whew, yeah, I look back now and it's like, wow, like, yeah, I feel, I was talking to someone the other day and I was like, I have written so much software in my life. Like, there is so much code that is just out there in the ether now that, like, so much time, energy, blood, sweat, tears, you name it. Like, I mean, man, time you can't get back. I mean, you want to be intentional about like how you spend that time, right, and going after the right thing. So my journey started uh, through the video game kind of channel. So I remember pretty young, as a young teen, um, getting the family comp, we called it, in the house, and then started playing video games, and that led to me getting interested in building websites for like my clans and guilds and the games I played and such. So back like the GeoCities site builder, I would do that, and then like I would look at the code behind and see how it was built, and get Notepad open and change some things and re-upload it. Right? And that's kind of how I learned and taught myself how to code and build websites. And then so I saw that computer interest pretty early on, and luckily my parents put me in a trade school, or recommend, not put me, but, like really encourage, that I would go into a trade school my junior and senior year of high school. Went for computer networking, got CCNA certified, A plus certified, and then got a job right out of high school working at Bank of America at the age of 17. So super blessed to be able to do that early on in my career, right? And skip the college path and just go right into what I wanted to do. And actually started programming right from the get go. But I always had a little entrepreneur passion along the way. Always, it wasn't. I think I've always had that without really the thought of, like, it wasn't really much of like a job security thing at the time. It was more of like I want to make it like big, right? And I want to. Like, I just had that like hustler mentality. I remember washing cars and mowing lawns and all that stuff early on, even before I was eligible to work, right? And then now here in the career, I was trying to network, going to startup competitions, user groups, conferences, how I met Kevin, right? Getting involved in the local community. And uh, and there are at least 10 startup companies I've been involved in numerous times, being the one that actually built the software and expecting the other partners to do the marketing, the business side of the house. And never really took off. Like, the customers that we anticipated that would do stuff, like, we made some money, but never really took off like I would have hoped to on the product side of the house. On the consulting side, that always worked out because it was just me building something for some client. I controlled that. I know what they want. I'm going to go build it. I'll get paid that way. So like the consulting relationship and money always seemed to work out pretty well on the side. So yeah, but I was at the first job, Bank of America, for 11 years, and I just thought, same as we mentioned earlier, my parents did that, stayed at a place for a long time, and that's what you're supposed to do, kind of thing. So, but while I was there, I was a software engineer, mainly doing web application development at the time. After being there so long and the startups not working out and such, I kind of thought about my career. I was like, I've been doing this career, but I haven't really been paying much attention to it. So I think I want to bring to the podcast a little bit of the whole, like, yes, we're going to do multiple threads of income while at the same time figuring out how to use those skills and what we're learning to also make sure we're advancing our career, right, in parallel, right? Because that is a huge thread of income. You're probably your main thread of income, right, as we go along here, that you can't forget about, and you have to keep investing in and like looking for opportunities in that space as well to continue to grow and fund potentially some of this other type of threads of income initially that you want to get started. Get started on it, that hopefully do take off. So I went the management route. So now I'm a VP of engineering at a technology data company. So it's been a lot of fun going through that journey, and now being able to mentor and coach junior engineers, senior engineers, even really on like achieving the next step in their career, whether it be continuing the technical route or whether it be going the manager route, and then getting involved in local community and helping other students and such, from getting started in computer science and trying to give them advice on where to go. and LinkedIn, the career networking type of stuff, little social stuff. I've always liked networking and meeting people. So I'll probably talk a lot about it. It's kind of where I've been and where I've been going, but always on the side, still looking at other avenues of income, right? That could come in, who I can partner with, maybe someone that has a problem or a need out there, and whether I help build them with it, or whether we find a way to partner and I just introduce them to someone else that does it, and then that could turn around down the road into some other opportunity and stuff. So it's been fun. I've enjoyed the journey along the way.
And one thing to level set is, Sean, both you and Chad have W-2s. You report to every day. I am my own W-2. But it doesn't really count, I think, in the same way as YouTube. There are other businesses that pay you a regular salary for your services. And then you have things you do on the side to bring in additional income. And that's kind of sets us up to this entire path that we're on for multi-threaded income. But I guess if we kind of piggyback off of Sean, one of the ventures that you went on was along with me. And we had a podcast we did called Two Frugal Dudes, because we both have a mutual interest in personal finance and building strong financial foundations and learning as much as we can to make that financial foundation as strong as possible. And Chad, I know you're on this journey as well. So it's not like you just weren't part of the podcast.
Right.
But we learned along the way doing the podcast, which we started for fun. It was just, can we take table conversations and make them a podcast? And we actually got pretty popular, I guess, in the small industry of personal finance media. But the thing we learned was you can't necessarily take the free thing that you do and turn it into something that brings money in. Having a name, Two Frugal Dudes, makes it increasingly impossible to ask people for money, because the people who are your audience are frugal and they're not willing to pay you for regular services and whatnot. So we ditched that idea, and that was a couple of years ago. We just let things simmer, and COVID happened, and I think the three of us were having a chat, and this came up as an idea of how can we use our skills to help people. And I've always been a big advocate of teach everything. And between the three of us, we know a lot. We have a lot of different experiences, and how do we use that to best help everyone out there? So that's how you got here, folks. The Multithreaded Income podcast is just the first lever in the machine that we're calling Multithreaded Income. And what you should expect from us is this podcast will come out every week, and it's going to actually have 2 episodes. I'll have a main episode with a guest, because we have a lot of friends that are doing this exact sort of thing. We're doing a day job with some stuff on the side, or they have multiple things that they do to compromise or compose of their day. And we're going to talk to them. We're going to learn from them. And then the second episode will be a commentary between at least 2 or 3 of us here in the group, where we talk about the lessons we've learned from the interview, and hopefully help you pick out some of the tidbits that you should really dial into and figure out where it should go. So that's the podcast portion. We're also going to have content up on a YouTube channel and on our website, and we're going to start hosting regular challenges, which if you're listening to this, you should get more information about in due time. And if you're looking at just starting somewhere and you don't have anything on the side, I really want to push you to join one of our challenges, because it's no cost to you. You'll jump in, and we're going to put you through some paces to see if you are even in a mindset to start tackling some side income. And then, of course, if you need more help after that, we'll have other services, but that's not here for the podcast. Guys, any final words before we jump off this episode?
No, I think this is great. I enjoyed hearing both of your stories like this, and I'm just really excited to see all the guests we're able to bring in. and glean from them, learn from them, and have conversations about it. And hopefully this will be of value to those listening. So this is great.
Yeah, we're gonna learn so much more. Like, we continue to learn every time we talk with each other. It's not like we're just teaching our experience. We learn something new every time. I love the guest thing, because then we're gonna learn new concepts, and then we're gonna get the commentary episodes are gonna be great, because then we get to spitball about those ideas and pull out the key little content and wins, and or talk about, hey, we tried that, it didn't work, or what was our experience, or like, why didn't I think of that? That probably would have worked here, right? Just like Chad talked about earlier with, man, I should have went after the companies using the HoloLens, and not the individual consumer market that really wasn't there, ready to buy $X thousand headsets at the time and such. So yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be a fun journey
For sure.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, listeners. We're going to cut it here, but go to multithreadedincome.com for all the information, all the podcasts, all the videos, all the challenges. And we will see you next time. Y'all take care.